Well, hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to the build of the composite CARF L39 Skygate version. Beautiful aircraft. This is build video number 3 in the series, and we are going to probably either get this thing finished in this video or be very close. So hang tight and we will get back into building this aircraft. All right guys, last video we finished off with just getting the gear doors kind of set up, getting the servos installed. The front gear doors is done, ready to be bolted onto the aircraft, so we're going to do that actually. One of the things is there's a front battery plate that goes in the nose. We're not going to install that this time. In the original build, or the previous one that I did, I actually made a hatch in the front, and we ended up putting some of the batteries in the nose, some of them in this area right here. So knowing what I know now about this aircraft, we're going to modify that a little bit. We're not going to even bother with that, that plate in the front nose. So what we're going to start this video off with is finishing up the main gear doors. Once we get the main gear doors, the linkages and everything figured out, then we'll put the pipe back in, start getting the tank installed and all that kind of stuff. So, and then work our way forward with the aircraft, and we are getting some great progress on this thing. So let's get back to these gear doors. All right, so we've got our geometry, linkages, all that stuff done on the big main doors. So I've got them programmed right now. We just bumped them up on the, or put the plane up on one of the Robart stands so we could operate them. So I think they're going to be good. We had to adjust the opening on this backside right here because it was rubbing against the door when it closed, but otherwise the main doors are done. So moving on to the nose gear. Now there's a shot there for geometry and setup. The manual doesn't really show you in good detail what this should look like, so there's a shot of what it should look like. Now there's a couple interesting things with this gear. Number one, these two pieces down here, they're probably scale pieces, they rotate. On the very first one I built, we left these rotating and they became a problem because they would kind of sit sideways and get jammed up on stuff. So what I've done here is just put them straight forward with the wheel itself, put a couple drops of thin CA, and now they're in the forward position. This cover plate here, that just covers the actual set screws that hold the gear in place, and then you can give it a quarter turn or whatever and then do this screw to cover those things up. And I would suggest doing that screw forward and backwards as well too, so it doesn't interfere with anything. We've also had to open up the wood a fair bit on this gear opening as well. So you've got to open up this whole area to fit the Electron gear in there. The back portion is open up wide enough, but the front portion you have to match up with the back. And then this is kind of has a round profile to it. You have to square that off so the motor has room to sit in there. So that's what you need to do to make the gear fit. But we're not going to bolt this gear down until we get the nose of the aircraft bolted on and we're able to retract this gear. Reason for that is we want to make sure that it's going in nice and centered. So we're going to get the nose bolted on. We'll get the gear all done by putting flat spots on the pin and making sure that's all ready to go. And then we'll hook the gear up, retract it, and get it in a nice, perfectly centered position, because we do have a little bit of wiggle room there for aligning it. All right guys, it is time to do our giveaway draw for the products from RC Custom 3D Printing. Joe, thank you for donating these products for the giveaway. This is super cool. I love this. This is a pretty nice thing. So all this stuff's going together. We'll go on the computer here and we will do our draw giveaway. I'm going to flip the camera around so and then we'll be able to look at the screen. Okay, so we're in the back here in YouTube. We're going to go to our TubeBuddy, pick a winner tool, and all the comment must contain the word 3D. So as we talked about, during the video you needed to use the word 3D in your comment. Let's pick a winner. Batman, you have won the 3D parts from Joe. So congratulations. Make sure you reach out to me by email, thelightersideofrc@gmail.com, and connect with me that way, and we will organize getting these shipped to you. Congratulations. All right, so we've got our nose gear all done and ready, and it's ready to go inside the aircraft. So our linkage is also hooked up for the front steering. So that's all done. We just use the stock CARF hardware, one of the carbon MKS horns, and everything lines up good. The servo, it's best installed on the bottom of that plate to get your servo arms lined up properly. If you're using a clevis, I guess you could put it on the top, but that's the setup we went with. So we'll get this installed in the aircraft now. So what we're gonna do is put this in the aircraft, hook up the retract system, and get it extended into the nose so we can get it positioned left to right properly. All right, front gear is all mounted. We've got the wire run for the steering servo, and just use some electrical tape, CA, and that gives it some nice relief so it can move perfectly. So nose portion is done. Moved on to the back portion and made sure we got all of our servo wires run. So we've got our air brake and main gear door servo wires run, all that kind of stuff. Put the tank Velcro in, and we're ready to pop the tank in. So fairly easy to remove this if we need to with the tank tray setup and everything. But I think we should be good. The only thing we have to run backwards now is the lines going to the turbine, which is no big deal. And then our startup tray, which is going right here, we'll have all of our lines to run for that, which again is no problem just to fit those in afterwards. So we're going to bolt the tank in, or strap the tank in. We've got the UAT mounted as well, and once the tank is in place, then we will start looking at our next steps, which I think is going to be probably starting to organize some of this electronic stuff. All right, now that we got her flipped over, we got a couple other things done here. Our vent line's installed. The front unilight is installed. This one, you basically do it just like we did the top one, so you Dremel out the area. The reflector actually sits inside, so it's a bit of a compromise, but it's the same type of principle. And then also did the canopy latch stuff. So it's pretty straightforward. You just got to get that spring over top of the brass tube. Easiest way to get that over is pull the nub from the front. If you don't pull the nub from the front, it's going to be a real pain to get over. I think I struggled with that exact same thing on the first kit I built. And then you just have the wire coming back, the sheathing goes over top. You got a little loop on the end with a ball. So this is the canopy release. So I can't touch it right now because the epoxy's drying or curing. But when you want to release the canopy, this just, you pull on the ball and it releases the front little pin because it's all spring loaded. So we'll let that cure, and we've got a bunch of the wiring kind of organized and the stuff organized in the front end. So that's kind of stuff that we've been working on as well too. But we'll flip this over when that stuff's cured and continue on. All right, guys, and there's a shot of the inside, all of the wiring that we now need to go through and organize. What I've done is I've also added some wire keepers. These are available on my website. So we've done some 8-wire keepers kind of scattered throughout here. There is a rhyme or reason to my, my installation here. And we've got some wires coming from the front, mostly from the back. So we're going to get that stuff figured out. But let's talk about today's video sponsor. So today's video has been sponsored by Solder Stick. Now, I was extremely skeptical when I first saw these things, and if you guys didn't see my testing video on this product, I'll link it down below in the video description. Definitely check it out. That test video goes through a whole bunch of different tests with this product, but I'll tell you guys, I was very impressed with these items. Now, I know lots of people are skeptical. Perfect. You should buy some and try them out because they are amazing. They're number one, a time saver. Number two, I think they're a better solder connection, a better heat shrink connection. For me, it's a lot about time saving, but I was extremely impressed with every aspect of this product. Now I'll show you guys where we're going to use it in this jet, or where we would typically use it in an aircraft like this. But you can get a discount on SolderStick's website. Information's all down below, but you guys can get 20% off your order if you use the discount code RC20. RC20 gets you 20% off your order. I'll show you guys where we're using it in this aircraft. So a very common scenario like this is when we install the Unilights, we've got the Unilight wire running to this location, or in some cases like our wings, we've got 2 power box wires coming to our location. Now, rather than using a connector and putting another servo connector on here, because we've got very specific connectors that go into the Unilight controller. So what I do is I keep the connectors on as much wire as possible, but we need a way to join this wire onto this wire here. So the SolderStick low temperature solder connectors are perfect for this. So what I can do is get this run, measure out exactly how much I need. We'll put our SolderStick connectors on there, and easy peasy, super easy to work with. Now generally I would be putting my soldering iron in here. I would be laying out a towel and fighting with all of the different connectors and shrink tubing and soldering in the inside the aircraft. This one's not bad. Some aircraft are absolutely brutal, but the SolderStick connectors, super easy to use. A heat gun is ideal, but I have started recently using just a lighter with these connectors, and they work amazing. Okay, so a couple of you guys have reached out to me to ask if you could use a lighter. So this is going to be this episode's tip time, and this episode's tip time is brought to you by SolderStick, today's video sponsor. Okay, so I'll show you how I've been doing this with a lighter. I'll just get this all set up here first. So I just get the connector on there, I push the wires together, and then she's ready to go. So what I've found with the lighter is it's helpful to give gentle heat. What I was doing on the first couple I tried was I was just trying to melt the solder first, and it doesn't really work that well. So what I do is get it in the blue flame, and trying to melt the ends first is, I find, the key. So I just do the ends, keep applying heat slowly there. And then eventually, like right now, the solder just melted. But I just do this, keep going across the connection. And, oh, the solder's all the way to the black wire now. There we go. So not quite as pretty as the orange connector there that I did, but basically the same thing. So I think that is definitely the key to using the lighter. Start on the ends and work your way towards the inside. But this other connection I did right here, the orange one right beside it, that was also done with a lighter as well, and works out beautiful. No problems with that at all. So check them out, guys, if you're interested. SolderStick connectors, they are wonderful. SolderStick.com is the website. And don't forget, you can use RC20 to get 20% off your order. This is the 500-piece kit, which is awesome. I think I would generally mostly use the red connectors and also the blue connectors and the white. We're not going to use the yellow too often, but the red, blue, and white are definitely the ones that I use most often. All right, guys, so we've got all of the core wiring now complete. So now we move on to the accessory wiring, is what I call it. So we've got things like power leads, right, running to the front. We got to get those done from the central box here, from the turbine, and the gear, things like that. So we've also got the receivers to plug in and get hooked up. Then we've got our stuff that's going to our startup board. So we've got our GSU plug from the turbine. That's going to go to the startup board. We've got our Cortex programming plug. So what we want to do is, if you need to reset the Cortex or set up the travels or whatever, the limits and stuff, you need access to this plug. Well, we don't want to have to take the cockpit out to do that, so we just run a servo lead extension up to the startup board. We want our fill line run up there. We did connect the pump intake to the UAT, so that's done as well too. So we're moving on to all the accessory stuff. Now the way we've run this setup, and this is a first for me, is what I did was I plugged the Unilights into our spare red outlets on the central box. So we've got 17 and 18 is for our lighting power, and what that's going to do is, my goal is to only have 3 batteries on this aircraft. So we're going to have 2 big batteries for the receiver setup, and then we're going to have one of those batteries is going to also feed the gear, the electron controller, and then we're going to have 1 more battery for our engine, a 3-cell LiPo. So that's our setup for this, and it's going to be nice and simple, and it's going to work good. We're going to use like 5,000 milliamp batteries on the central box. Actually, we're using these guys, 5250C batteries. So those are what's going to be powering the lights, the central box, and the gear. Nice big batteries. So I'm going to work on that stuff. It's pretty straightforward, just running things nice and neat and clean, and just making sure that we've got access to everything we need from this startup board. All right, now we are basically done the wiring. There's the startup board there. So the startup board's pretty simple. We have our fuel valve, our fuel to the turbine valve, sorry, our fuel filler, I should say. And then we've got 2 little plugs down there. Instead of mounting them on the board, I kept it even more simple and discreet and mounted them on the fuselage there, and it worked out good. I'm actually happy I did that. So we've got it marked with the label GSU, Cortex, and the little symbols in the middle show the layout of the wire, as well as the color on the plug. So that's the startup board. We've got our inside pretty much done. Everything's programmed. Everything's plugged in where it needs to be plugged in. We've had it running for quite a while here already, and we're all good. So we've got our keepers on the central box. It looks a little bit messy, but there's really not a lot you can do in this aircraft to hide the wiring. So the one key with an aircraft like this is all the wiring needs to be perfect length, right? If you have trays and stuff to hide it under, you can leave excess wire and just have it sitting underneath there. But these guys, you pretty much need to have it perfect length wiring. So we got a GPS mounted on top of the fuel tank, GPS 2. These things are just fun. They integrate with Jetty really well. We've got the receiver for starting up the aircraft from the radio right there. 900 megahertz is right there. That's plugged into R3. And we've got our 1 Rec 7 receiver down here. Now we will add another Rec 7, but it will be a clone, and that'll be plugged into port A on the Cortex. So all the wiring is done. The only thing we have left to do with wiring is our battery plug-ins at the front. Now we're not going to do that until we get the cockpit installed, and then we'll know exactly how, where. I kind of have an idea what we're going to do. We're going to put our plugs here. Batteries are going to sit on top. So that's kind of the idea. So now, next thing to move on to is going to be cockpit-based stuff. So we've got a couple things to do here, and we've got to wait for some glue to dry. So first thing we have to do is we've got to take the base of the tub. We've got to install it on the side pieces, put our blind nuts and screws and everything through there to get the sides and the base of the tub joined and positioned. So that's step number 1 for the tub itself. Step number 1 for the canopy is we got to take the insert out, and we actually have to split this. So there's a good build thread on RCU. Dave Wilshire covered this. I also covered the cockpit installation in my last video. Anyway, so he ends up cutting it right here, but before you cut it, you glue 2 magnets in there. And then what that allows you to do is cut it with a pull saw, and then it's easy to take apart but easy to put back together because the magnets hold it in place. So we got to take that out and get it glued, and then while we have that out, we can also tape this guy off and paint the inside of the canopy itself. So we want to paint that with probably a gray color to kind of blend in with the tub here as best as possible. So a bunch of first steps to do. I think first step that we're going to do though is this guy and getting the blind nuts installed. All right, so we've got our bolts holding the cockpit together. So you can see here that it's all stuck together. So I went with 440 bolts and blind nuts flipped around the other direction. I think the last time I used maybe 2mm or 256, I can't remember. But I think probably 256, but the 440s are gonna be better. The 256 were just too small and they were a real pain to deal with, but I think this is gonna be a better layout. And we've gone with 1 on the front, 2 on the biggest portion here, and then 1 on the back vertical. So just got this stuck in place, drilled the holes through, put the blind nut on backwards, and then just put some 2-part epoxy on there, and we're letting that cure. So we've got to let this cure for a decent amount of time so everything lines up perfectly. The next step on this part is going to be putting some Velcro on these side panels, getting them installed in the fuselage, and then getting the bottom plate reinstalled so we can get everything lined up. Now, you can't put this all together in as one piece because the width on everything, I mean the actual cockpit opening is as wide as my hand right there, right? So there's just no way to get that all in. So you've got to put this piece in, then put your base in. So this is kind of step number 1 of the cockpit fitting. So while that's curing, we're going to tape off the outside of the canopy, and we're going to get that sprayed, and then we're also going to glue 2 magnets on the interior portion. We use magnets to glue the canopy glass in, but in a situation like this, it's a little bit difficult when you're by yourself to mark the canopy glass. So you can use magnets for so many different things. So in this case, we're using the magnets to hold the canopy in place. So now I can flip this guy over. We've got quite a few installed there on the center, 1 on the front. I've already cut the front portion out, that's sitting over there. So now when we flip this guy over, it holds it in place beautifully. So what we can do now is we can take our Sharpie and mark out our canopy glass, and then we know exactly where to cut. All right, so we've got all of our pieces cut, so 3 individual pieces. What we'll do now is we'll pull these pieces out, get the edges cleaned up because we've got a little bit of Sharpie left on those edges, and then we will get everything magneted, stuck in place. So we'll get all the magnets installed, and this is a super important point. So this is such a critical thing. I've made this mistake once, over 10 years ago. You got to get the canopy installed in the aircraft while it cures. The canopies will sit in kind of a funny position, and you want to make sure that you get the canopy magneted in place, you get all the glue installed, and then you get it installed on the aircraft, because that's going to have everything sit down nicely, and then that canopy glass is going to cure in the correct position. So super important. It's absolutely critical. I'll show you here another example on the F4 that's coming up. So you can see here on the F4 canopy, obviously the glass is installed already. So we're going to be putting the cockpits in these removable canopies. So when you take the canopy out, the whole cockpit's going to come with it. So when we glue this cockpit in or fasten it in, we want to make sure that we're squishing this down and getting it in the right spot. There's no little pins or anything holding it. So that's one of those critical things that is really important when you're gluing in canopy glass. All right, so we've got the canopy installed. The key now is just let it sit and let it do its thing. It's in the perfect position on the airframe. It's all nice and solid and everything. So all I do when I install the canopy, the Formula 560 glue, is just run a bead along the perimeter. You can see where it sucks itself in. The capillary action just pulls the glue into the joint. So it works quite well. So anyways, we're gonna let that sit, let it be, and we'll probably take a look at it again tomorrow and continue on with the cockpit. All right, so the little decorative piece that goes around the inside of the canopy. Last night we glued 2 magnets in place. Position doesn't really matter. If you go towards the front end here, this is going to be covered by the instrument console, so that's why we did the split where it is. So all you do here is glue 2 rare earth magnets together, and then you can take a saw, a pull saw. The magnets, of course, are fighting you, and you basically just cut this in between those 2 magnets, and then you've got a nice strong connection when you put these together. Super simple and basically invisible. So we're going to get those cut out, and that'll be kind of the last thing we can do at this point. All right, guys, and that is going to be everything for this episode of the CARF Skygate L39 build. Obviously, we did not get everything wrapped up in this video, so next video, we will be completing the cockpit, completing the entire plane. So we'll get the cockpit done. We've got the engine to still fully install, the batteries to take care of in the front part of the plane. So still lots to do. And then of course the test runs to do on this plane as well. So thanks guys for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below. Give the video a thumbs up if you liked it, and we'll see you in the next video.